Most investors follow trends. Very few develop edge. This show focuses on something different: how serious operators build durable wealth in overlooked niches, starting with mobile home parks. We'll break down the strategy, underwriting, discipline, talk about the roadblocks, and the operational execution that'll make your capital aligned with long-term returns. This isn't about chasing deals. It's about thinking like an allocator and executing like an operator. This is the Mobile Home Park Exchange. There is a version of you that got you where you are right now. You worked harder than everyone else. First one in, last one out. Never the most talented, and you knew that, but you made up for it in your output. And for a long time, that was enough. Maybe even longer than you expected. But at some point, and if you've scaled anything real, you know exactly what moment I'm talking about. That version of you stopped being the engine and became the ceiling. And today, I'm going to tell you what it actually cost me to lose that identity and why losing it was the best investment I ever made. Welcome to the Mobile Home Park Exchange podcast. This is Frank Rizzo, and most content and most of the time when we're talking about scaling, it's always about what to build. More units, better software, bigger teams. This episode is about who you have to stop being. So if you're an operator who suspects that they're the bottleneck, but you don't want to say it out loud, if you're the investor trying to figure out if the perfect person they're backing has made this shift, or if you're the founder who's still running on hustle and hasn't hit their ceiling yet, you will. I want to tell you how I built my identity around one thing and what happened when that thing stopped working. One of my first real professional jobs was working on getting my Series 7 license. And I'll never forget, I'm standing outside the office in the morning with a broker who I didn't work for, but who had seen me there. And as we're walking into the office or into the building and we're just talking, I'm asking him, what's the secret? Like, what do I have to do to be successful? And he said to me point blank, he said, forget everyone. Forget everything you're doing now. Forget your friends. Forget your girlfriend. Be the first one in every morning and the last one to leave. He goes, and I guarantee you, in 12 months, you'll find your friends in the same spot you left them, but you'll have a brand new car. And I took those words to heart. I knew I didn't come from a network of wealthy people. I never thought I was the smartest person in the room, right? I always knew there's always someone there who's a little bit smarter, might have a little bit more experience. But the one thing I knew I could always do is that I could outwork them. And so I committed. And while I always did that, I looked at what he said as a challenge. And I took that concept and I turned it into something that stuck with me. Philo. That was my system. And if you've seen my bio previously, and if you remember, because I know you probably remember my bio, I built my business and my identity around the Philo system. First in, last out. It wasn't a tactic. It's helped me or drove me to make sure I was up at 4:30 in the morning, make sure I was in the first one in the office. And I've trained countless sales people, sales teams on that exact method. And the idea what behind it is that 80% of it is just showing up. And if you can outwork the next person, you're bound to be successful. And here's what Philo actually built for me. It built my real estate brokerage company. It built Stone Capital. It built the first parks, the early deals, and it gave me the credibility. It gave me the seat at the table that I did not have just by birthright. So that in itself gave me something that money couldn't buy. It gave me control over the one variable in a world where there's so many variables that you don't control. I can control how hard I worked, what my input would be in anything. And I knew I could outwork the next person every single time. And early on in my journey in the manufactured housing space, I mean, here's where it helped. Our very first deal that Eric and I had purchased, we bought a park in Jacksonville, Alabama. We thought we were doing the right thing for our partners there. We hired a local management company that was highly rated, highly decorated, did not have manufactured housing experience. 6 months into this deal, 6 months into this acquisition, into this purchase, our occupancy is down almost 50%. We've got vacant units that are sitting there. We're not getting any new applications, and it's looking like it's going to be a disaster right out the gate. Eric and I jumped in a car on a Thursday night. By Friday morning, we're there. We're showing units ourselves, and we would do this every other weekend to get this park filled. And it was not uncommon for us to get in a car, drive down to our communities 700-800 miles away, spending 14, 15, 16 hours in a car. And if you would have told me to build this business, how many truck stops I had to sleep at or how many rest areas I was going to be sleeping in, I would have told you that you were crazy. But that's what we were willing to do because we were going to outwork the challenges to make our investments work. So I built my entire career about being the hardest worker in any room that I went into. But at some point, that identity, the edge there stops working, and that identity becomes the ceiling. I realized that, and I hate when people use this as as the dividing line, but just prior to COVID, I started to see that maybe something's got to change. But then COVID hit, and anybody who runs a business knows good luck getting people to work during that time. It became very challenging. So it was easy to dig back in and recommit to that identity of, for this to work, we've got to work through the challenges we're having now. And that's what we did. So it was a recommitting, and it proved as we continue to grow during those challenging times, it proved that, guess what? That identity worked. But here's the cruel irony of Philo at scale. The harder you worked, the more business you brought in. The more business you brought in, the harder you needed to work. And eventually you start to realize, I didn't build a company. I built a job that could not run without me. And it's not like I didn't realize that something was going on. I'd read countless books, 30, 35 books a year. I spent tens of thousands of dollars on coaches and masterminds and developments. And I could tell you the moment that it all started to work, and that was the day I realized that the problem was me. And what the all that information and what I was looking to absorb in there, what I realized the biggest challenge was shifting that framework and admitting that while that might have been my edge and got me to where I was that day, I would need something else, something completely different to take me to that next level. And it was at that point where you get brutally honest with yourself. That's the moment where that next level of growth can really happen. And it wasn't easy. Letting go never is. The idea that I can't run into and solve every problem, that the systems have to solve the problems, that other people have to come in and be the ones to solve the problems. That is it sounds so simple, but it's for somebody, and if you're out there and you're an entrepreneur listening to this episode and you've got that type A personality, you know how challenging it is to sit back and watch other people struggle with things that you know that you could do faster, quicker, better than them, and let me just move on. But at some point, you might have the capability, but you run out of capacity. One of the greatest benefits from doing this podcast, and for as long as we've done this podcast, I've had the opportunity to really speak with an incredible group of people, and having them share their stories and hear about them. And one thing that always resonated with me, and for those of you who know Sam Hales from the Saratoga Group, I mean, not only a great gentleman, and a great operator, but extremely insightful. And I've heard him say something that just seems so foreign, but also so humbling, was that he strove to be the least important person in his company. Now, you're talking about a man who built a company to over 8,500, 9,000 lots. And when you think of that, and you think about having to explain what that actually means, not that you're irrelevant, but the opposite, that you're building a system so strong that it doesn't need the founder to survive. It actually needs the founder to grow. And it was such a powerful phrase that it's resonated with me, and it's stuck on how do you do that. And it takes work to be able to pull back your ego to understand that. Scaling isn't just about buying more parks or buying more assets. It's about getting the right processes, the right people in the right seats, and then as a founder, knowing exactly where you need to show up and where you need to get out of the way. Because there's only certain areas where you have that unique ability that nobody else has. And that ability is what's going to make your focus on that, is what's going to make your company grow, your investments grow. We've all done that. And one thing that I've worked on specifically is not to stay on a operation, a task, a decision so long that it actually costs the company growth when the people you have in place might come up with an answer that is just so much better or different than yours. And that's why you put them there in the first place. So that saying from Sam, I mean, there's a huge message in that. You know, and if you're an investor listening to this right now, and I know some of you are, I want to speak to you directly for a minute. The operator who hasn't made this transition, it's not because they're a bad person. It's because if having every business decision flows through them, it will limit that person's energy and availability. And at some point, there's an execution risk at the portfolio level. The operator who's made this transition, who's built those systems, who knows where their unique ability is, who has engineered themselves into a different role, that's where you can get, or you start to compound your assets. You want to build a business that actually gets better when you're not in the room. One of the standards that you look at is, can this business run without me? Right? Can I step away? How much can I step away from without this business falling apart? And if I've done my job well in the systems that we've built, then there's sections that I can step away from, and it can run without me. And that allows me to focus my time, energy, and attention in the areas where my unique ability does best, and we could build from there. So losing that identity was tough because it was me losing what I thought was my edge, but I had to lose that edge to find a deeper one, to find one that could take us to the next level. So if you found value in this episode, I ask you to do me one favor. On the streaming platform that you're listening to this, rate this episode. This is how we get the message of the mobile home park exchange and mobile home park niche real estate investing out to other people. And if you share that rating with us at the MHP exchange, I will send you a free copy of our after site visit report. It's the same report that we utilize to keep our team members aligned, to ensure that the business plan is being executed and we're moving the asset forward. And that'll be our gift to you. This is Frank Rizzo with the Mobile Home Park Exchange. Until next time, everyone, happy investing.